Joy, do you have any minutes? Are you ready? We're just gonna,
What did you say?
I'm sorry, no, I was just checking to make sure where those executive session minutes were. Good evening, good to see everybody. We're going to start the work session for October 27, 2020. And we're going to go over the regular agenda just real quickly. There's a number of things that are good. There's a number of things that will be added as we go through there. And if I miss something between the city clerk and city manager, please remind me. So the first one's going to be, approval of the regular minutes, the work session minutes, and the executive session minutes for October 13th. I think everybody's had a chance to review all of those. Are there going to be any questions, comments, or concerns on any of those three? Oh, Ms. Knight?
No.
Mr. Quah, any concerns on the minute meetings?
I'm good.
Okay, Ms. Van? Van?
She's on mute.
Did she say something?
She's on mute.
She may be on mute.
I think you're on mute, Van.
I'm sorry.
Okay. And then, I know there was a number of things we were going to add to the consent agenda. So,
You want me to remind you?
well, I've got three items to add to the consent agenda. One is going to be related to Georgia Power Lights. And this is where we did a little bit of a survey through the city and determined areas that we had walked in the past that needed a new light pole, not necessarily something that was fixed. There was a list that came out. A number of those were on Twilight Trail and in Murphy Drive. I think a couple of Morrow Circle. They had the part that was off of Stratford Arms, I believe, the park down there in Harbor subdivision.
However, we had hoped to put a light on the existing pole with the weather siren at Waterton Park, but Georgia Power says no, can't do it. So it'll be dealt with in a different one, but the list that you're approving does not include the one at Waterton Park.
Okay. But we know that's under power. We'll be able to make all that work. So any objections to adding that to the consent agenda?
And Mayor, I do want to make sure we do identify that you will need to execute an agreement.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
And then,
You said it's not going to include
The one that's in that beige color, the Waterton Park.
and we'll execute an agreement for that particular one?
No,
Should we
well,
put on
you'll
a
be
different
executing an
separate poll?
agreement for everyone other than that on this list.
yeah, and that's just the ability to do it and then authorize.
Because it's going to increase your energy bill, it has to be executed in a contract, and you'll see the monthly energy increase is $255.45 a month.
Objection? Okay. The next one, we have a dead tree, which normally would not be a city problem. However, it is located on what I want to call a remnant piece of property, and it's in between property lines. And that particular piece of property, we cannot find the current owner. We know it's a private piece of property, but none of the current adjacent owners own it. And it's got a dead pine tree on it. It is a public hazard, and if it falls, somebody's really going to get hurt. And we've already got some sections on it. So what we want to do is declare it a public nuisance. We will then figure out how to go over and work with the private sector to go across that property, and we will take it down. And then at that point, we'll figure out what our costs are. And this property has had the property taxes paid on it since 2013. Odds are it'll come back into the land bank. We'll pick it up from there, more than likely, and then try to figure out how to make that go back to the adjacent owner to some degree, because it's not a good.
And just to clarify, it's not that we can't find the current owner, there is no owner.
One of the
So it's-
adjacent owners
yeah.
for a long period of time just simply paid the taxes on it, which made it kind of a little interesting. But that was his way of just making it work. When we reached out to him, he's like, I don't have title to it. You don't see that very often, but it is, if this tree fell over, somebody's gonna get hurt. And pieces are falling off of it now, and I don't know if all the pictures were available. We got, limbs going through structures and things like that. And that's generally just unacceptable. So we'll go through the process to make that work. Is there any objection to having that on the consent agenda as well?
So do we have any idea what the cost will be to remove the tree?
It's a dead tree. We're gonna declare it a public nuisance to start with, and obviously go after, a licensed contractor.
I mean, Billy, do you have any insight on just a tree that size, typically how much is it, or Marty?
I would say probably about 1,500.
All right. I got a feeling it's gonna be a little more than that. It's a tall pine tree, it's dead, and the pieces are already starting to fall, so. We're gonna get additional insured as a city, because my fear is, we get up there, something bad happens. So we're gonna pull our insurance into it as well as the insurance from the tree company. They'll be licensed, bonded, insured, whatever else we need.
But we're not clear on the cost, but we're estimating probably 2,000 plus.
I would say at least. And a lot of that's gonna depend on how easy it is for whatever piece of equipment is necessary to get onto the private sector property and across it safely. And the last time I've seen that done, somebody had to actually have like a physical crane, grab the top crown, and then they cut it and run it down. But all it depends on how dead that tree is for real, how dry that one is. It certainly is a problem. And
Is for real. Not dry there.
It seems he's connected to two systems. He may need to disconnect his phone.
you hear that clock? I've got somebody, whoever that was sounded great.
Whoever that was sounded great. Whoever that was sounded great.
Very nice.
Probably was me. First time joining the video, and I don't know what I did.
Oh, you're good, you're good. If you ever wondered what you sounded like in triplicate, I think we got that figured out. So that's awesome. And then,
And I probably might.
we got it. All right, and then third, the city council, met at the last work session and defined the interim chief, and we have a recommendation from the city manager, and I recommend adding that to the consent agenda for approval, and that would include appointment of the interim chief as well as the reorganization changes as defined. Okay. Is there any questions in relation to that? Ms. Keaton, you good? You good, Ms. May?
I did want to make a comment.
Okay.
I'm okay with the recommendation, but I am growing a little bit more concerned as there have been so many personnel changes. We went through a period of time with the budget where there were people cut. Now we've added, there's been an evaluation of job descriptions, pay classification, pay grade scales. I would feel a lot more comfortable if we began to have a conversation about having an actual HR person that can continue to manage those changes and make sure that, we're in compliance with any human resources laws and things of that nature, so that our piecemeal addressing of some issues with regard to pay and jobs is really focused by one person that it's going to be their task to maintain those issues. So that is my comment. And we have not had a conversation. We've had a lot of conversations, but we really haven't had a conversation about looking into really having an HR person that works on the city's behalf to make sure that we are doing things in accordance and in step with various HR laws.
Any questions, Quak, and related to the interim chief proposal?
No, I'm good. I'm good with that.
Okay, Ms. Van? Okay, and then the last one I see here is Falcon Design Garden Concept.
Yeah, we're gonna ask that the mayor and council delay that.
Okay, we'll just take that out. No problem. All right, so that's basically gonna be our consent agenda. Then your regular agenda, I don't know if there's any changes to that. Is there any issues with the regular agenda for tonight? This time? Christine? No. Mr. Quah, any issues with the regular agenda?
No, sir.
Okay. Ms. Tran, any issues with the regular agenda? Okay. Going on, we'll have a presentation from Melissa Mullenix, Chief of Staff for Morrow. Then new business is approval to appoint Deputy Fire Chief Jeff Moss as a state mandated laboratory director, and approval to execute the clinical laboratory improvement amendments application and related documents for the required certificate of waiver. This is really cool, and I realize most people won't understand that or appreciate it as much, but Ms. Ryder.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to rob the fire chief of the ability to
Oh, by all
tell you
means.
just how cool it is.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. How much detail would you like me to give? I mean, I gave you the letter with all that information in it, but.
Yeah, let's just tell them the why that means something to them.
Okay. So basically, there's a federal agency called Clinical Laboratory Improvement Amendments, and they regulate laboratories in the U.S. And there's 3 or 4 different levels of laboratories. And so recently, Georgia realized that they had not ever made EMS providers like the city of Morrow, who provides ambulance care, obtain one of these certificates of waiver, as they call them. And the certificate of waiver will allow us to basically take prick someone's finger and check their blood sugar. We've been doing it for years. It's never been a problem, and all of a sudden somebody at the state said, hey, everybody's supposed to have this thing, and we don't have it. So that's all this is, basically. There's over 100 tests that are listed or covered under the certificate of waiver. And certificate of waiver tests are tests that it's very hard to have an erroneous reading on them. That's how they determine the different levels. And so for a laboratory, like the city of Morrow will now be a laboratory, the laboratory is actually in our ambulance. It's not the building or the fire station, anything like that, it's our ambulances.
Does this allow us to have the laboratory requirements to meet Abbott to be able to do a COVID test?
Well, funny you should ask.
So, the Banks test, I believe it's called, I think it may be made by Abbott. When those are released in the near future, they will be distributed to agencies like ours, and it's just for fire, EMS, and police. And what I understand, maybe their immediate family. Not real sure on that, if they're symptomatic. It's not just they're gonna send us a bunch of tests and we start testing everybody. The language is clear that it's for symptomatic EMS providers, basically, but they've said it's also police and fire.
Yes, but our lab would be able to now classify as the lab that would be allowed to do that.
Yes, but not to do the public, not
Right.
to test the public.
And at some point, but at least it gives us what is it, a 15-minute test? I mean, there's a new one out this far.
Yeah, this is the rapid test, 15 to 30 minutes, I believe.
And, you know, the reason that really matters is, you know, when you're not feeling well in public safety, you know, there's lots of things that, you know, we come in contact with you. So this gives us some pretty live time. We're right now, basically, we're on a 24-hour schedule, right? Somebody goes home, they stay there, you know, and you know, that leaves us a lot of downtime. So we're making progress. It's not perfect, you know, but trust me, it's a lot better than it was in February where everybody had to wait 10 days. And maybe, you know, we know the testing ability that they have is actually far greater than that. It's just our ability as a city or a fire department to be able to administer it is the problem. It's not that it doesn't exist, it's just they won't let us have it. But this is at least a step in the right direction. We're getting closer, you know, so take the step while you can get it, and we'll take the next one. Then we can provide some service to our residents as well, more citizens. So, any questions related to that? Then you want to answer the next one right behind it?
Sure.
You're going to deal with the COVID vaccine, not to be compared with what I just discussed, but.
So as we all hear, there's a vaccine coming, don't know when, but the first wave will be designated for first responders again, fire, EMS, and police. The State Department of Public Health has an application that's required. We've already done the first step, and I was able to sign that, but now we need the CEO and a medical director to sign the new application. This will allow us again to only vaccinate our people, our first responders. and possibly their immediate family. So,
Again, it's a start, but either
Right.
way, you know, something good is around the corner, or at least, and my understanding is, was it Fisker, whatever it is, you know, that they're producing, you know, millions of their potential already. And if it fails the test, of course, they just throw it in the garbage, you know, but if it meets the test, then they have a certain number that are already available, and then it's just a matter of getting it out to residents. So, and again, your first responders are critical, because we're not gonna be much good.
So
Questions?
the motions would need to include the designation for Deputy Chief Moss to be the laboratory director, and to have him authorized to sign the papers related to the laboratory. And then also for your authority as the CEO to sign when necessary.
for the vaccination.
For the vaccination.
Yes.
So the,
And we'll walk through that slow, so that we get it right.
It's listed, correct.
I'll just read it? Okay. That'll work. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Any other questions related to any of those? Ms. Knight?
I have
Go ahead.
a comment. You just stated that there is a certain number of vaccines possible. Can we play caution to that about repeating something that isn't really there yet? I know we've heard a lot of different numbers, a lot of different things, so.
As to whether that particular vaccine
Right.
is useful or not, this is just simply saying, let's say you own the company. You think you have a product that is going to work. You have already started to make it in
Right.
mass quantity. We don't know, and they don't
Right,
know
right.
whether it's gonna pass the test. But the idea is, if it does,
Right.
I'm not gonna be determining that, somebody's gonna determine that, then they should have several million doses available. It's a lot more than that.
Right.
And if it doesn't, they throw them on.
But you just gave a name of a manufacturer, so
That
that's.
is one manufacturer that's
Yeah,
actually
okay.
doing it. And I'm
Okay.
sure there's more than one. I
Right.
understand there's one overseas that's doing it too. I just don't remember that name.
Yeah, right. But just for caution.
but our agreement's with the Department of Health, isn't
Yes,
it?
yeah. Approval to authorize us to execute an agreement on a piece of property we own at 1837 Lake Harbor Road, which is an agreement for basically the little loft apartment that we have over there to recapture some of the money. It's been an apartment before, and the city has a lease agreement. Any issues with that?
As long as everything is up to code, right?
I assume I have.
We're not, we're good, right?
I mean, I don't know that it has a sprinkler system.
Well, on that one's been an apartment for
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah, we don't have it.
So, any questions, Quoc or Van? Item C, item new business 4.
No question?
Quoc, you good? Okay. Ordinances and resolutions, so we have the second resolution, or a second reading of the ordinance for microbreweries. And that basically is, you know, small little microbreweries that we think have an opportunity to locate here that, you know, brew pubs or however you call them. So this isn't, you know, Coors or Budweiser or somebody coming down here building a huge manufacturing facility. This is, you know, a 2,000, 3,000 square foot restaurant that's just gonna brew a little bit to make it available in a very, you know, tight restrictions from the state, so in there. Any questions related to the microbreweries?
No.
Christine?
No.
Mr. Quan?
Okay.
Ms. Van?
No questions.
Okay. Second reading, residential trash collection. Any questions? We've had many sanitation discussions.
This particular ordinance takes out all the recycling language.
It makes that
Just,
work.
you know,
So, and almost everything.
And it, you know, it
starts
takes out the
November 1st.
language about twice a week, and it's only once a week. I mean, we just cleaning up some of the language to mimic the current contract. But most of it is removing language about recycling, residential recycling.
Any additional questions? Ms. Van?
No questions?
Mr. Quan?
No questions.
Okay. And this one's gonna be the first reading of the fee schedule for streetlight fee removal and commercial compactors. It's two things all at one time, but obviously the streetlight fee, that's something the city decided to charge years ago. You know, they called it a fee, but, you know, technically it was it's a tax, and you pay $60 on your light pole, and, you know, we remove that. So there's no reason to send you a tax bill, for something that's not gonna matter. Is that correct?
No, I mean, it was a fee, but yes, we're removing it. It was just on the tax bill.
You worked for the government a long time, so, everybody else, it's a tax, okay? When I take your money and I'm the government, it's a tax. But it's a fee. We'll make that work. And then, just update you on the commercial contractors, like there's an issue there.
It was just, the chart for the rates of commercial compactors was inadvertently left out of the previous ordinance. So because it's all on the fee schedule under Title III, we're just including it on this one, sort of a housekeeping measure.
Okay. Ms. Dean, any issues? Ms. Smith? Ms. Van, any issues?
No, it's still,
Mr. Clark?
No, I'm good, how you doing?
All right, so that's pretty much just going over the regular session, and then we'll work our way through that. Then picking up from there, let's see what was not here. Sanitation discussion, are we on time for the transition? And-
They got my recycling cart, how about you?
Yep, it's gone.
Yeah.
I went out to Lowe's and I picked up one that is commercially available, and a 95-gallon container. I don't know that I've ever really paid attention to it up until now. It's big. If you look at the traditional advanced container, it's 65 gallons. I know that simply because my neighbor had one and I drug mine off the truck. And 95 gallons is a bunch. You know, that's the biggest one I sell. And then I still have 2 small trash cans that go in there. So my normal trash can would hold, you know, 2 little 13-gallon garbage bags, you know, something along those lines. There's a larger one. If you needed the double capacity, I'm not sure how many people are producing garbage there, but it's a lot. So I think that should help for what they have. And they're readily available. Lowe's,
Just
Home Depot.
for anybody who asked, the schedule for the pickup is already on the website, along with the numbers and the emails that you might want to contact the sanitation office for. So that's there. And Billy, you want to talk about the commercial transition, how we're going there?
Yeah, it looks like everything is going well. They started actually removing the gray advanced containers Monday. And basically what they're doing is, the days in which they're scheduled to pick up the trash, advanced, Waste Pro is backfilling. They're not bringing the gray container back, they're staging it to take it back and to get it out of the city. So as of right now, everything seems to be going pretty good. It's a little slow process. They started out a little slow, but they're picking up speed. They should have all the containers all dispersed to the different locations by Friday, end of Friday, business day.
No, they will.
Well,
They will.
yeah, they will.
Because we've got an event at the Morrow Center, they know they have to be gone.
Yeah.
I think at that point, we're out of time. So let's see. Conference Center financials, did we get anything from one? Did they publish, the advertising?
I have a sample here. This is the Trade magazine, and this is the El Nuevo.
Oh, sweet. You want to pass those ones? We can see them? My eyesight isn't what it used to be.
No.
And obviously, we've got a state-of-the-art conference center. The idea is to spend a little marketing money and advertise it. And they wrote a whole article for us, didn't they?
And Ballard picked some up at Trim, that they were out, right, with the Trade magazine? Did you tell me? Did you see me?
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
And then I saw a Google something.
Oh, yeah, that was remember we had Google come out and do a 365 virtual tour, so we just sent y'all the link so you can share it with whomever you wanted to see it.
Sweet. And people can do that. You know, when they do some of their Facebook advertising, can they tap that somehow?
It may already be on their website, but
Maybe.
we'll do it on ours.
Well, I mean, a number of us, share files. So that might be something that actually works for everybody. Just looking at the net income numbers, and anybody have any questions on the profit and loss statement, for the last really 4 months of the Morrow Center? Any questions? Any questions, Ms. Van, on profit and loss for the Morrow Center?
Has there been any progress with some additional outlets for advertising?
I think the one that we saw was,
Well, because remember, we were gonna put together an ad buy for 2 other trade magazines, and I apologize, I know he was here with it last time, but we didn't get to him, but it was,
Atlanta Business.
Atlanta Business, well, no, which was the one we decided was just way too cost prohibitive? It was the Atlanta Business Chronicle, I think, yeah. And then, but the Atlanta Magazine and the Creative Loafing.
Okay.
So we'll get you those numbers, but, it's going to be remarkably more expensive.
Well, certainly, it's a different
Yeah,
market, which is a
definitely.
lot broader,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
because he's not here, but we'll just bring him back the next time. But another was, some positive news in terms of his bookings.
So the $17,000 rental income that you see is actual things that have happened. They're not bookings. In fact, what he reported to me today was that they were on target from contracts, it was 133,290 projected revenue for 2021 as of right now. Contracts executed. Of course, some of those will maybe cancel, but if everybody who signed a contract right now comes to pass in 2021, the projected revenue as of October 2020 is 133,290.
And can we see what amongst those listings or the bookings are listed in? I'm just curious. Because we just started to do some advertising. Are they current Christmas season? Are we talking spring?
Well, and since that Trey and El Nuevo were just last week, it's likely that these sales weren't touched by that yet.
Makes sense. Okay. Moving on. Now this one's important. They're all important, but the city passed a section called the 85 rule on retirements. And when you're looking at most governments, one of their biggest unfunded mandates is a retirement program. And our traditional costs were about 9%. And once they made that change, those numbers went to 17%. And that cost you about $225,000 more a year. And that's a lot. The question was, you can't do anything about a current employee that's here now. Once you made that as part of the rule, then anyone who's a current employee today is entitled to keep that rule. We could make the change and stop that and get your costs back down to something that's reasonable. But it's like an unfunded mandate for a certain number of years. So the study that we had through GMA, this one's from Michelle Warner, basically said, how long would that take? And what you can see right there in the current chart is it's going to take a while to get it even remotely back down to something that's going to take till like 2036, well beyond anyone that's currently sitting here. And that just simply means, if John was here, he's 55 years old, and he put in 30 years instead of having to wait the other 10 years. We basically paid him to leave. You'd be crazy not to take it, right? But you also have to pay for that, right? And those numbers are going to be with us for a minute. So the recommendation was to look at it and kind of see how do we fix it long term, and what does that mean? Even if you fix it today, it's going to affect your pocketbook for 12 months. my recommendation, of course, would be that you fix it. There will eventually be somebody else sitting here, and 17% is a lot. So if you want to be able to say, get it back down to something reasonable. Yeah. And we also realize this, the number of people who actually retire here for 30 years is very, very small. The number of people who do more than just vest here is also very small. Yeah. You'd be better off if you're going to spend the money. Give the guys a raise. Then that money's in their pocket today, and it's everybody's pocket, right? So we gave everybody across the board, $2,500. That costs the city about $150,000 a year, give or take. Right? So that's money they can spend. This is money that only a small handful of people are ever going to even be able to use. So it's not a real. Right? For that small number that it is, congratulations. But it's a very, very small number. How many people, with the exception of the current group that just stepped out, retired from the city with 30 years of service? 4.
That could potentially,
No, that before we implemented this, we know the number that stepped out was about 8. But before that, I don't think the number was very high.
yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Under the rule of 85?
No,
Well,
before.
People who retired with 30 years of service. So more people stepped out in the last 18 months than stepped out in the last 25 years. That's the
3 people come to mind that use the rule of 85.
right. And there's more, because some of them are just waiting in the wings, but if you just take the total number as to what you're paying.
If he's counting you.
Well, I'm here.
I know, but I didn't say that.
I'm just saying.
Well,
You know,
it could be you. But actually, we love you so much that you can come back to work. But it's, but you have to look at what, that's what you're paying for, right? So, y'all have the charts. We know this wouldn't be something that could be implemented like right away. There's a process for it. This is the first time most of us have had a chance to read the chart, get an understanding of the chart, and the floor is open for discussion. Ms. Dean? Ms. Knight?
No questions.
Ms. Van, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Qua, any questions?
Okay, no questions for me.
Okay.
So what happens now is that GMA will prepare the ordinance, and then it will come back to the council, where you will have to approve the ordinance to remove it. Correct. Just like we had the time frame where to do the removal of the contribution, it just takes them a little while to get the ordinance crafted, and then it'll have to come back to you for 2 readings.
And then just remember, the money that's in the city's retirement account, it's not the city's per se, it's the employees, right? And we're the only ones who contribute. Our employees are the only, well, we contribute on their behalf, but the bottom line is we're the only ones that contribute. We're not getting money from the federal government, the state money, or anything like that. So anything that uses that pot of money at a greater rate than what is normal, we've got to make it up. And that's what they call your funding rate. So a lot of pension funds are funded at 93%, 97%. I think we're at 87 or 88. So if we wanted to be able to, and this would just be a sheer game of luck a little bit, if we wanted to get that number back down to that 9%, and let's just say magic happened, and we just happen to have a really good day, we need about $1 million to basically put that into that retirement account, get back to some state. That might be a little bit of a stretch for today, based on COVID and a few other things. But just keep that in mind. If we ever make that step, and it's tough politically, because right now you can use that money for something else. And let's face it, a council much further down the road than us, can absorb costs just like we can. But if we're being fair, the idea was, if we're going to fix it, just look for about $1 million number after somewhere. And that's what it came for us to buy it back down. Also remember at the same time, we like to pay our employees a little bit. And because they're listening, a lot better. On the city county property tax for the commissioner, this one is kind of addressing some challenges we've had in the past. Is, the city operates independently from Clayton County. Clayton County determines the value of the property, and they set the digest. Right? Then they'll go out there and collect their taxes for Clayton County, and they also collect it for the Clayton County School System. The city of Morrow is responsible for collecting our own, right? And we have an internal system and an internal process, and some of that didn't go exceptionally well. We haven't collected some outstanding taxes and a few other things, and we ran into some issues earlier in the year. What we asked the tax commissioner of Clayton County was, would they work with us to collect the taxes at one time? In other words, it's all on one bill. And that way, when they collect it for the school system, they also collect it for us. There's not an independent accounting system here where we have to worry about it. We just simply go and do it. He said that made sense, and this is what their proposal is. And the second year is pretty good. The first year,
I think the first year is not to exceed 45, and the second, starting the second year and beyond is not to exceed 25,000.
looking for the actual number that you got that from. I don't see it.
Page 4 of the
All right, conversation. All right, so
6.1.
So the first one was basically a fee, and then it comes down to about $5 a bill, right?
Correct. Per person, yes, sir.
And then, with the exception of that one-time fee, the first year after that, the fees were actually pretty good, right? $1,000 in the addition fee, you see that, 6.2? But that first one was higher than that. Okay, there it is. Okay, now I see it. All right, so try not to pay attention to the not to exceed $25,000. That's nice. It's $5 a tax. Much easier to understand, right? And then we have a one-time fee of 20 grand first year, and that's for them to do setup and all the different things that goes with that. And the subsequent years after that, they just charge us a $1,000 fee. Right? So on the front side, at some point, you can say, well, we can pay an employee to do certain things and make it work. Well, as long as we're being consistent and it's working. But once you get past that first year, now you're saying, you know, for what the city charges to do mailing and printing and things like that, it becomes fairly economical. And then the certainty, let's say, you know, John doesn't pay his property taxes, the county's gonna collect all the other taxes as well. And we don't end up with a scenario that we've seen to some degree, where the county's selling the property on courthouse steps, but the city of Morrow still owes taxes as well. You know, and now you've got that, some of those agreements we were talking about earlier in the year, this solves that problem too. Any questions related to this? And this is their proposal. Are there any questions related to the proposal? Ms. Dean? Ms. Knight?
No question.
Ms. Van, any questions? Mr. Quah?
No question.
I didn't hear from Ms. Van. Van, any questions on the proposal?
The only thing that to think about that is that if we could have that in control, we can manage that and have create a job for somebody who works for Morrow. That would be good. So but for now, we don't have, at the moment, we don't have that system set up yet. It's not that efficient, so we'll do that. That's for now, but at some point, I would like to see if we're able to have it in-house and create a job for more. But for now, I don't have further questions.
And this was just a series of one-year contracts, right? Ms.
You
Redmond?
can terminate with or without cause by giving 180 days prior written notice.
That's more than enough, because it's just basically each tax year. So if the city attorneys had a chance to, you know, review the form or however you want to look at it.
Well, you're not voting on it tonight.
I know.
Yeah.
The point is, once we've kind of met the meeting of the minds, it's all about what the attorneys are going to tell you can sign. And let's, go ahead.
So the payment of the fee, in 6.4, the fee is what they're calling the salary supplement to the tax commissioner for doing the work of the billing. Is that what it's referencing?
There's a cost to, if you read that in, the cost to reimburse the county for providing the service, and the remaining amount shall be distributed annually as an annual salary supplement to the tax commissioner. And that is by code. That first part of the fee, not a good question, but after that's only $1,000. I can't imagine it's that. And this would be the tax commissioner entitled to charge, some type of fee.
I'm just wanting to be clear, that's.
Yeah. But if you're asking me of that one-time fee, how much of that would go to the tax commissioner, I honestly have no idea.
No, that wasn't the question. The question
Of the
was,
$5?
yeah, what they're calling, what we're seeing in the language of the contract, of the agreement is the fee that we're going to pay, but they're referring to it as the salary supplement, and I'm thinking salary supplement for the service that they're providing for the
There
bill.
actually is a salary supplement that does go to the tax commissioner. That it does. And that says they pay them a certain amount, and if they're gonna do this additional work, basically we're paying, a portion of the salary. And as long as it's still cost effective for us, I'm not sure that matters. Not to
Yeah.
me.
I'm just wanting to be, clear.
But we paid a fairly sizable amount of money to kind of solve one issue this year. This is just kind of in play to make sure we don't have to do it again. Right? A little safety net until the city council changes its mind. Right? But if that's being said, then let's just get it to form and make sure that they're still good with it and making changes and go on from there. Professional translators? Is that?
Yeah, so it's just one, council member wanted to know if we wanted to think about maybe hiring a professional translator, since we have, and I don't know, it would really be up to those who are bilingual with Spanish language to tell us, is that necessary for the Spanish? Or is it something we just want to consider for the Vietnamese? I mean, unfortunately, I'm at sort of a handicap because I don't speak or read either one. But we have a lot of, like any letter that we send out, or business or residential newsletters, it's just a lot of translating. So just some consideration as to whether or not we would be interested in hiring, instead of doing it in-house, having someone who does it outside of the staff that's currently on.
And one of the things we've also noticed, again, I don't read any other language but English and barely that, is, we can translate it in-house reasonably. But if you're gonna send it out with your name on it, there's some wording that can change for people who don't do this every day. In other words, just me and you kind of people. And what we're actually saying out there is a little horrifying. And you're gonna sit there and go, probably not a good idea. That would be like us sending something out in broken English. It doesn't really, it's not professional. So what I'd recommend is that we at least find some options to see what those options are. Simply because we write so many different things. And we've easily seen the mistakes, and they're honest mistakes, they're not bad, but we can correct the ones in English fairly quickly. But the other ones are going to catch up to us if we're not careful. And I'm going to pick on you just a little bit. The one that was in the current newsletter, I can tell you that, right?
No,
Um,
no.
It's fun. Ask.
It's probably not funny to everybody.
Well, then I'll just say, ask Sylvia, and she'll tell it to you. Because it's an honest mistake, it's fun, right? But if we sent it out, it would not be fun. Does that make sense? And it was an honest mistake, but that's why you do it. And any questions related to that?
I do have a question. We're creating 2 new positions with that?
No, these aren't positions, this is just, think of it as you pay per service.
Per service?
Yeah, this ain't somebody
And
in-house
we will be translating to whom? Businesses or just the?
Well, it depends on what we're writing. So if we write write something that's a newsletter, a business newsletter, they would just simply be translating what we're writing in English into whatever the other language is, and that becomes the newsletter or whatever in that language. So that's a per hour basis, and you just find that somebody listens.
And as needed. It's not, you know, we only do 4 newsletters a year, or 4 residential, 4 business, if we're gonna do that. And then, you know, a service letter like the sanitation letter. We don't send those out.
Pretty basic stuff, but we're just gonna try to find somebody. Our in-house people can do a little bit. But what's really happening is we're almost rewriting the newsletter because we're not accurate.
Yeah. We're human. We're loud.
Any questions? You'll have some fun when you ask you the questions, it'll be good. Any questions related to that? And we'll get some pricing and some other things in the next meeting. Right. I want to change up here just a little bit. And I know by the time we usually get to the Public Works Director, it's dark. And we're going to give you the floor because you've got some really cool stuff to talk about. So we're going to give you some room to show off with it.
You want him to show off?
Good evening. I have quite a few things on the list to talk about. I'm going to start with the streetlights. We've gone out and did some assessments. There's an agreement before you guys tonight that kind of speaks to adding some lights to poles throughout the city. This is the first wave. I'm certain we're going to go through the city on a second look and just look at additional locations. So if there are any locations that you guys know of, feel free to reach out to me and say, hey, could you make the assessment at this location, and we'll do that. Morrow Road, Bridge, and Island. I've got 2 contractors that have taken a look at that. Basically what we're going to do is Morrow Road, the island that we have, is too big. And I visited with the mayor and the city manager, and so basically we're going to get costs associated with reducing the size of the island and maybe adding an additional island and modifying the bridge to make some repairs from an accident that occurred prior to arriving here. That's coming along pretty good. If everything goes out as planned, I should get some feedback from the contractors later on this week.
And for those that are driving Morrow Road, you know, going toward Haney, you know, you have a tendency to overcorrect, and then you got that square section of the bridge that, you know, the hip. The idea is if we kind of take that curve and kind of move it in about a foot, you know, the other direction is not a problem. You've already crossed the bridge, right? You can correct and there's a curve. But on the first side, we've seen it a number of times. And before we go in there and start spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a bridge, it's a whole lot easier just to move the curve in just a little bit. And then we give you the safety you need, and then they can put it in. Because the correction's not that much, right? If they get a foot, now you've got plenty of room. And we already know you've got 9 foot in the lane already. If you just pay attention, you can stay within it. But just some people, for whatever reason, it bothers them, and they move over a little bit. And then they're in the Masonic Lodge parking lot, you know, getting their tires.
Or the creek.
Or the creek.
Or the creek, yeah, which was a little bit different, but that was a bigger truck, right?
Yes, sir. I just finished visiting. The next one on the list is the street painting. Basically, we're going to do a number of different paintings in the streets. We are getting a piece of equipment so that we can refresh the lines on different streets throughout the entire city. If everything goes as planned, I hope to have that in by the end of the month, if not mid-month. The second piece is throughout the neighborhood, we've got those red areas at the front of the neighborhoods. Got a price today from a contractor whose pricing is pretty good. They've done other work for us. Basically what we're going to do is refresh the paint. We're going to put some slip-resistant material in the paint so that we won't encounter what we're encountering now. You get on that when it's wet, the tires kind of spin a little bit or you slide a little bit, so we're going to do a few things to correct that. So that's coming out pretty quick.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
equipment for paint and lines, you said we're purchasing that equipment?
We're actually purchasing a small machine. Basically, it's designed to paint lines on streets, and you can redo parking lots. We see a need for that. It's because some of the streets, you can't hardly see the lines any longer. I've been working with another contractor who can assist with doing overlays and restriping, parking lots in other areas. And we'll continue to work with county, and identify roads where we need to pretty much, mill the roads, repave and restripe.
So is that a substantial purchase or?
Oh, no, ma'am, it's roughly 2,500 and some change for the machine. We will be able to put 5-gallon containers of paint onto the machine so that when we do start painting, we're not having to stop and go. So we'll paint, for example, we'll paint the yellow lines first, and then we'll paint the white lines and so on and so forth until we get everything back to some normalcy.
And that's really neat if you really start to pay attention to it throughout the city.
Yes, sir.
Action.
Long overdue. Next one is continental paving, repaving, and speed platforms. I'm working with the city manager on that one right now. Haven't quite got everything shaped up, but it's in the process. Hopefully, when I come to the meeting, the next meeting, I'll have some better
And when we met with the resident over there, they told us that somebody had said that street had been repaved since 1988. Is that true?
That is correct. It is on the list for remilling, repaving, this next year for the grant projects. So it is on that list, along with 3 additional streets that I've recommended to the city manager that we do.
It's 32 years, that's a long time.
Yeah, there are, just based on my observation of driving around and assessing the streets, we have a number of streets that have been overlooked for quite some time. And so what I tried to do this time was identify the ones that were the worst, go ahead and put those on that list. And I've provided the city manager with a 6-year plan of streets that I think we need to pave in sequence.
But we got that. So,
I don't know that you've gotten it yet or not.
whatever.
Well, we've been discussing, but it's available.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Which I just covered, street repaving schedule. Clayton State House, which is at the end of Highway 54. We have a small property there. Had a contractor working there for the last month. It looks pretty good. It's at the point now where it's ready for us to inspect and see if we can get a tenant in that house. I'm excited about it because looking at the overall amount of work that needed to be done, it was huge. And the contractor gave us an extremely reasonable, good price to go in and do what they've done. So I'll get photos tomorrow and get those to the city manager.
What was that price?
Ma'am?
What was that price?
$7,500. There was.
Bottom line is we ought to be able to, something that's just at least been repainted or something, we ought to be able to get a decent amount per rent.
I think looking at what we've done and some of the modifications that we've made, honestly, I think we can get probably anywhere from $1,000 to $1,100 in rent for that.
So that's a payback of 5 months, so we know we're not gonna be able to make much happen before then, so, you know, that's a pretty good return on our investment. Good job. I haven't seen the pictures, but,
I'm still working on city parks and evaluation and results with regards to the addition of new equipment, modifying and repairing equipment. Now, we have completed a complete assessment that identifies equipment in the parks that needed to be repaired. We made those repairs. We made sure all the equipment that we have today is safe. What I'm gonna do, this next step is recommend changes that we would wanna have, or changes in some of the equipment. What we're finding is some of the neighborhoods have playground equipment in it, but they no longer have children in the playgrounds or using the playgrounds. So some discussions I want to have with the city manager is, do we really want to keep it a playground with playground equipment, or do we want to modify it so it's a use that we can do something else with and draw the neighborhood into the park area? So I'm working on that, and I should have that hopefully by mid-month, if not the end of month of November.
and along the way, explain the guide wire that's down over at Skylight for folks who have seen that.
Yes, so what happened there was, somebody came through, the park area right there with a huge truck, and they hit a guide line. And it's not an electrical line, it's basically a guide wire that they were using to run cable and some other miscellaneous wires on. I think they had Comcast and they had AT&T running on that line. I reached out to Georgia Power, put in a work ticket. Also reached out to Montague and basically said, hey, I need to get this taken care of as quickly as possible. They assured me that they'll get a tech out as fast as they can to get that line. But it's not hot. It's nothing to be alarmed about. It's just a guide wire that was knocked down by a big truck.
Why don't we stop right there and have you pick up right after the council meeting, should next week.
We need a few minutes.
You need a few minutes? All right, just take a quick break. We'll be right back.
She's like, what?
He's let the city public works director finish. He's only got like 3 more items. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Back to the podium.
All right. Billy, underwear.
Quickly.
And Dorothy. We got 15 minutes.
Billy? You give it 15 minutes. Less than 15 minutes.
I'm gonna be less than 15 minutes.
Because for the most part, we know when the events are very other things. It's been a long day. All we're gonna do is let him.
That's the part they're doing right now, right?
Billy, you're so popular, everybody laughs.
I know, I tell you what, I'm trying to give everyone some great information and they don't want to take it, but Jester Creek project is, Jester Creek project is going extremely well. I went over the other day and did notice that they had made a boo-boo and crushed a portion of my curve. I reached out to Tri-Escape and Mark, our engineer. They're gonna make the repairs. Once they finish the path, I'm gonna get back out to make sure that's going extremely well. They resolved the issue with the soil, so the project is still moving in motion. I think we're gonna meet our timeline. The pedestrian path connection, I'm working with the city manager on that. We're starting to get some ideas of what that needs to look like, how it needs to be done. The first thing we're gonna do is actually take a piece of equipment over and get permission, but we're gonna cut away the areas that we think the path needs to be. I'd like to get you out there and put your eyes on it, make sure that it's where it needs to be, so we can connect.
Well, this is the one that's over by the university, right? And I think they drew up the design, they gotta kind of stay on that path because they've got a specific easement for Clayton County.
Right.
Now. So, and most of that's underneath power line easement. I think it's just a matter of making it look good. And that gives us the accessibility. At some point in the future, that's probably gonna be a parking lot if they ever develop, the Westwood Way side. And we met with their economic development team for Clayton County today. There was a couple of really interesting ideas. I don't know that they would have the horsepower to be able to develop up there, but it doesn't mean they don't have the opportunity to do something in the city. So I thought that was pretty good. But just on that one, I think they gave us a price of $147,000.
That is great.
And this is where at some point we're really gonna have to start running that budget was lost and be able to run it right back. 1 second, Billy. On the, I know that they were here, and I know this is a little tight, but, I hear, I do, and I.
The thing about this, it's a very frustrating topic. And, I think that there's gonna have to be more advance of the plan and the inclusion of the city of Morrow. I think
Not just us.
that's the biggest thing.
I've met with some other jurisdictions, and everybody's in the dark as we are. And they seem to have no problem building stuff and wrapping it around us and telling us where it's gonna be. Good news, you got to hear it for the first time. And you're like, wow, it's only your city, and, that's,
And being excluded from that plan is not.
well, and some of this isn't even a good move. In other words, you could say, we could do better, just right. Why wouldn't you build that into consideration? So I'm looking forward to conversations, but I also want to follow up on the open records request, get the information.
So we're missing a lot of
Well,
that. And
do
the
you ever
thing
get
about
the
it
feeling
is,
that they're spending, I mean, how is it they spend all of that money coming out of College Park, East Point, start building roads that aren't even in this county? And you gotta know they're gonna be building the better part of the terminal, because none of those terminals are built for the BRT or whatever they wanna call it, or the ART. That's our money. So am I helping build, out your bar stations?
so according to her tonight, that's supposed to be coming from a different pot. Now, I don't know if that's truthful, but that's what the representation has been.
It's the right answer.
Right. Whether it's the accurate answer, we don't know.
And that's a finance thing. We'll find out.
Right, right.
But at least they now know we're serious, and we'll follow through. I think that's the only way to really let them know that we're really serious. Because we'll get the data, we'll look at the data.
Correct.
And if it matches on certain things, it won't. But I do think we have more control in the city than they're letting on.
That's what I'm making sure that I go through all the IGAs that you have with the city, with the counties, to make sure that we understand what those total agreements are.
Thank you. Sorry.
Not a problem. Last couple of things that I have, Christmas ornaments, we actually went to the warehouse and actually started dusting off our Christmas ornaments, lighting them up, trying to make sure that we have, that the bulbs are all working correctly. So we're assessing everything now. We're not gonna wait until November, mid-November to do that.
When we had different designs, and there used to be a time where we would swap them out, as we add to them, because years ago, we didn't have any. Then we started to add. My understanding is, things like the, what we're gonna call it, the singing Christmas tree that is broken. But I'm asking you, do you even have it?
The Christmas tree?
Not the Christmas tree, like the singing Christmas tree where everybody stands on a podium.
That's a good question. I will have to check tonight,
Well,
or
I
check tomorrow.
know the warehouse that I thought it was in, no, and I'm going, if I can, there's only so many we have. And I'm not
Yes.
saying that you guys haven't done a good job of packing it away, but I doubt seriously you can pack everything that I know of in there. So I would say, if somebody could put eyes on it, I would be interested to know the condition.
Yes,
If we could get a welder, right? And there was a number of choirs that might have an interest, and I know the theories on COVID and things like that, but we could have a lot of fun with it. But if
So-
we wait too much longer,
This singing Christmas tree?
have you ever seen it?
No.
I think I know what you're
I
talking
don't know
about.
how I feel.
Can I fill in a little bit?
Sure.
The singing Christmas tree, which is at the time Mike told me hire like a group that they have like a program and they put a light on there, and then that group is controlling the light from the computer.
Right.
Right.
Well, that's the electronics of it. Right?
The platform.
It's huge.
Right.
And it is a Christmas tree. And then the way it's built, you lay it up and you stand on a platform. So the first group of your choir stands at the bigger end of the Christmas tree, and there might be 8 of them. Then up one set of stairs, there's another group, there's 6 of them, then 3 of you, then 2 of you, then one person at the top. And the choir sings to
We
this.
had that here?
Yeah, we
Yes.
use.
I've never seen it.
I've seen the Christmas tree.
And pictures.
I did find the Christmas tree.
But that's like the real
Sure.
Christmas tree. that you
Correct.
write
Did you
down.
see it?
But I'm going back tomorrow
You've been here
and
forever.
check everything
Okay.
so that I can provide you with some detailed information.
Because that takes a little more effort to set up.
That's where I think it was, vaguely.
And we have to kind of look at,
And-
what is the
and
theoretical
we'll-
condition.
we'll time
That's-
And can
right
we
in front
fix
of
those?
everything.
Preferably, before we need it.
You know
And then if
the
we're trying to
I know
use
what
it,
we
that's
have,
one thing.
we've had every
But,
year.
at some point, we have to
the regular
reinvigorate
tree
what we
is
have.
different,
If we're gonna
but
provide
this
the
one is like
community
this.
as
People
safely
can
as
stand
possible.
inside the tree.
I've not seen
But
that.
I've got some folks who are interested, right? And I've met with every church in the city. Right? So it's not like they're saying no or yes, it's kind of like, well, before I promise you can have a place, right now you'll be standing on the ground, right? But I think, and then even if it's not possible this year, I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm just saying, I don't want to get ahead of my skis.
Gotcha.
Let's find out.
It's a priority.
Question.
I'll be on that in the morning.
When we had it, wasn't it right out there in the front where all the flowers and stuff are?
We had one there, I know we did it 2 years at Old Town Morrow, right, in terms of, because it's big, I mean, it was all that. But I haven't seen it in a little while, and then the question is, why don't we use it? And theory was, we don't have choirs who want to sing. all right, if we have an event coordinator one of these days, right, we're working on it, then I've met with the pastors here. I'm saying the answer is yes, but I'm ahead of my students. And it doesn't do us any good if I don't have a platform. It doesn't do me any good if I don't have a singing Christmas tree at all. So I just want to say.
Okay, go.
I'm on the night.
He's gonna
She's got
work
one
on
more.
it. He's gonna work on it. She's holding it every time. So,
Very last thing is,
has everybody seen your version of the city signs?
no, I do have those. I can share that with the council.
Yeah, just send them PDFs and things like that, because
Yeah,
there's people online. Let's just give them a chance to kind of weigh in, whether you use the digital signage or whether you use the permanent signage. I don't know if there's been I know, the theory is, and then what's it cost?
That's coming by Friday. I did talk with them today.
Well, let's wait till we get a cost before we tell them what it could be, because we might not go for it.
Yes, sir.
So once you get the cost numbers, just make it to the city. We'll talk about it next time. How about that?
Okay, and the very last thing I had was around the vegetation, as far as looking at some of the cleanup that we need to do this fall. I've already reached out to an organization that has an interest in providing us with some assistance and getting some folks to help us clean up some of the vegetation along the trail. Per our discussions, it's 6 to 8 feet in on either side. We take some of the vegetation, take the chipper out, chip it up. We look at some additional native Georgia type vegetation, go back in, it draws in butterflies and hummingbirds and those type things.
So I met with, I won't say, a younger guy, and he doesn't feel safe on that trail either. And you're like, does anything ever happen? And the answer is no, but it's a thought process. So if a guy that's pretty well built has that thought, minimum, it doesn't matter if it's real or not, then we have a whole different population that's got to be worse, right? So what we have to do to give us those view corridors, to bring that comfort zone back, whatever that is, that's what we got to do. And I wish I could tell you what all that is. I don't. It's how will you know you're successful? When they tell you you're successful. Right? I met with several people on some other issues today. Same thing. It's whatever they think is true. It's true. They're not trying to make you feel bad. They're just saying, this is what I think. And that becomes very important to us as to what we have to deliver. So it's an expectation that, and it's not unrealistic.
It's not.
Nothing here is complicated.
And then we also noted that there's some major preventive maintenance type work that needs to be done on some of the woodwork along the trail. So we're going to encompass all that into one huge scope, and then I'm going to pull together something to share with the city manager and talk about how we would go about doing that. But that is another one of the projects that is at the forefront of us getting some things done.
Project list continues. I know Ms. Dean would love to go home. So that being said.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Ma'am?
Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulty that I had earlier when we were talking about the finance report. So I have a little comment.
Okay.
Yeah, on the profits and loss, I'm looking at it and I'm not quite sure the accuracy of it. And I'm going to pick out the simplest fund among all the funds that on the summary report. That's sanitation fund. As of October 27, it shows that we profit $152,194.65 versus our expenditure is $279,507.35, which means that our cost is less than 50% of what we bill, because the profit is only half of our expenses. How accurate is the information? So we are at the fourth. It's not even ending the performance of the fiscal year yet. It looks like it's so, based on what information showing here, it shows that we are making 152,000 profits, which for foreman, you're looking at 35,000 a month. So if that continue to grow, we are looking at 400,000 profit a year. So my question is that how accurate is our report? How do we measure that? When we account the revenue and expenses, if we comply to the general accepted accounting principle or not, and what is the method of our recording? So, and then that was us to looking at the report for other funds. How accurate is this report, and how much reliable is this information?
That's a good question. What I do know is this is on average, the city only makes a $100,000 profit in the year, and that's if everything goes right. So if we're only into the first quarter, that number shouldn't be anywhere close to that.
But we still, like, we're paying, for residential stuff is billed like in arrears too. Cause like we just,
So when those bill in arrears, how do you recognize revenue?
the
How do
revenue,
you record revenue?
the revenue is actually, you're billing with your revenue. Revenue is different in the sense of you're billing you're billing your residential people like in advance or whatever. And so initially that goes on the balance sheet in deferred revenue. And right now, what I think, instead of trying to allocate that out the revenue out for that like every quarter pretty much, because right now we build for the months of October, November and December. We actually did that billing for that revenue in August in order to give people enough time, almost 30 to 45 days to pay their bill by October the 1st, or before October the 1st. And so I went in October, I went ahead and recognized the revenue for the months of October, November, and December in October. So that's why it appears that you got more revenue than you got expenditures.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Does that comply to the general accepted accounting principle?
Well, actually, when it comes to governmental accounting, and government people do it like a little differently. You don't sit and try to allocate, I wouldn't sit and try to recognize my revenue like on a monthly basis. You could do that, but I would go ahead and recognize it now. But if you want me to go back and do,
That's why now we're sitting where we are now. We've listed on the information that have an assumption that we are so far, just within 4 years, 4 months of the year, we are already making $150,000. So for us to rely on the report, those reports have to be accurate. And I hear what you say about government rules and regulations. Revenue recognition is not for us.
okay. Because basically all I've done is recognize 2 months of revenue in advance. You recognize your revenue for November and December in advance for the residential.
I hear you, it doesn't comply to the accounting principle.
Okay.
And therefore, all I'm asking is that have review the book and make sure the information that's provided to council and mayor are accurate and reliable.
Okay. I mean, the information is correct. You're just recognizing your revenue 2 months in advance.
But I guess my question would be is, so for the person who isn't an accountant that looks at it,
Right.
can you agree it misrepresents? Like I could think, wow, we're gonna make a lot more than we thought we were because I don't understand the back doors of accounting unless I come and ask you. So I guess what I would say is we want it, when we talk about accurate, even though the information may be technically accurate,
Right.
we want the report to
Represent
what we
your
actually
monthly,
have.
the monthly.
Yeah,
You want
not some
monthly, okay.
inflated sense of what we think we're gonna make
Well,
based
technically,
on.
technically it's not inflated because, well, The only thing, you gotta make it, bottom line with the revenue, you end up having to make an adjustment, which you're gonna do that at June 30th anyway for allowance for the money that we think we're not going to collect, which already got that information for the most part. And then with the way that, with the, I would say the people that, technically people are paying in advance for the most part. So your only adjustment would be for the people who did not pay for the bill for it. You know, so, but yeah, but if that's, I mean, yeah, I can go back and make sure that I can just allocate your revenues as you, I would say, as you earn them on a monthly basis. you know.
Because if they pay in advance, they're
And
definitely getting the
not
service.
only,
Right, right.
not only the revenue, but the expenditures as well. Like I saw in one report that has a statement that the expenditure of 200,000 something property and liability insurance premium is allocated to expenditure of that month. The premium, if the premium is for the entire year, you don't get, like the accounting principle, you don't just put it all in expenditure.
Well, auditors
You
are,
have to allocate that per month as far when it's actually happen when you do accrual, amortized expenses.
okay. Well, the auditors will allow you to record it the way that I did, but I can go back and reverse it and only show it on a month-to-month basis. The thing with that is that the people doing that would have to keep up with that every month, you know, instead of you booking it once in advance. But that's something that I can do, and then also that's something that when you've got like probably a better software system, one of the things I would do is have like what I would call monthly accruals, and you set that up just pretty much, you know, one time, and then every month you just know you ran that one report, and it would pick up and would allocate all what you would call those monthly amounts or whatever. This software won't do that, so somebody has to.
The software do that as well. The software do that as well, yes. You have to log into the right period to post the entry.
Okay. Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. You're talking about receivables. Okay. But sure, I can go back and reverse it and only show your expenditures on a month-to-month basis versus when they're actually paid.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Van. Meeting adjourned.